Hi everyone, it's Roger here from What's on DisneyPlus.com. A quick news update for you guys on how Disney Plus subscribers here in the UK may have to have the TV license to watch Disney Plus. But before we go any further, make sure you do hit that subscribe button to keep up with the latest Disney Plus news. So here in the UK, we have a kind of a unique system called the TV license, which was introduced way back in the 1940s. That requires anyone that has a device that can watch television that they have to pay a TV license to the government. It's about £170 a year at the minute. You can do it on a monthly basis or quarterly and break it down a little bit more, but that's probably about $200 a year that you have to pay, and that helps fund the BBC. So that's where we have all of our big British shows, all the stuff that you can get on there, most of which, there's no adverts. You also get the radio stations, funds the website, the BBC News. It's a great service. I love the BBC content that's in there. I love watching all the dramas, the news, etc. So I definitely feel, as someone that pays my TV license, that I do get my value out of it, and I would be subscribed to the BBC even if it wasn't almost compulsory, because up until recently it actually was against the law to have a television without having a TV license. They changed the law a few years ago where they made it no longer a criminal offence, though there are still fines involved. However, there's a lot of weird stuff with the TV license, because as long as you're watching live television, you have to have a TV license, regardless if it's on the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, or on paid networks such as Sky or Virgin, or even if you're watching live television through Netflix, Disney Plus, YouTube, Twitch, whatever it is live. Technically you need a subscription or a TV license. However, there's kind of been, over the last few years, a big shift in regards to how this whole system works. And a lot of people are no longer paying their TV license because there's kind of a loophole. Whereas if you're watching on-demand content, you don't need to have a TV license. So if you're using Netflix or Disney Plus, or just using a games console or using DVDs, etc., you wouldn't need to have a TV license. And people have kind of got used to that idea, and there's less and less people using the TV license because they kind of go, well, I just use Netflix. However, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. Is if you're watching something live on Netflix or Disney Plus, say for example, like if you stay up and watch WWE live here in the UK, on Netflix, you would have to have a TV license. It's very convoluted and a bit awkward. But some of the big problems as well for this is that over the last few years, the BBC and the government are trying to work out how to modernise a TV licence. As I said, it was introduced back in the 1940s. A lot has changed since then. It has gone through different changes as it goes along. One of the weirdest things to me that makes no sense is that you can go onto the BBC iPlayer, which is an on-demand system. You have loads of shows and films in there. And they literally ask you at the beginning, and it will say, do you have a TV license? Yes or no. And if you press yes, you can watch television. It's almost like I promise I've paid, and then you can go. It does seem a little bit weird. Personally, I think in order to get into the BBC iPlayer, I think you should have a TV license, because if you're paying for it, you should be able to have access to it. And if you aren't paying for it, then it would make logical sense that you couldn't log in. It'd just be a bit like Netflix and Disney Plus having no login at the beginning and going, trust us, bro, just pay us. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But nevertheless, there has been a bit of a hoopla regarding the funding of the BBC. Less money coming in, and they're looking at ways of trying to increase that. One of the ways, according to Bloomberg, is the government is looking to maybe make some changes to the TV license to include streaming services that you would require a TV license to access it. So in the same way that you would if you were watching ITV or Channel 4, you need a TV license. If you were watching Netflix or Disney Plus or Paramount or anything like that, you would be required to have a TV license here in the UK. All of which would help then fund the BBC, so we get lots of great British shows and stuff. Now there are some issues with this. There are some positives and some negatives. So let's deal with maybe some of the positives. So this would then mean that the BBC is getting more money because more people would have to be subscribed, because I think there's a lot of people that don't think they need to be. That would also mean that the film industry and stuff still continues to go. BBC gets funded and we get more British content. And that is good. It also means that the subscription costs indirectly aren't being put onto Disney Plus or Netflix subscribers. It's being done through the licensing, obviously. If you don't currently pay, that is going to be an increase in cost. But again, with more and more live content being included in these services, it's going to become more and more iffy. And I think that's where the problem comes in, because how do you prove to an officer that you only use Disney Plus or Netflix for on-demand stuff, but there is live services available within there? That's going to start becoming more and more difficult as these streaming services get more involved in live television. I think that is definitely something that they need to be aware of. So that's going to be the big key thing. Now, obviously, there's a lot of people that disagree with this. They don't like the idea that they've got to pay a TV license, and that, you know, if you're watching TV, why should you have to pay for the BBC? It's basically forcing us to pay for it. And there's a counter argument to that in the fact of, you know, countries around the world are all struggling to come up with a way of funding local production, because what's happening is, as the big world global streaming services like Netflix and Amazon and Disney are growing and growing and growing, the local networks are getting smaller and smaller. Some countries are bringing in, like, I think like in France, Disney Plus and Netflix have to pay a percentage of their yearly income to the government. So therefore, you know, that money's going to get passed on to subscribers one way or the other. You know, they ain't going to suck it up. The customer's going to have to pay for that in one way. Some countries are like Canada are looking at doing similar things. So ultimately, they're all looking at the way of trying to protect the local productions, because if they don't, and I will say this, is that in 10 to 20 years time, we could end up in a situation as if we don't do anything with this, we're going to end up with like Amazon, Netflix, Disney, and maybe Apple. They are the 4 streaming platforms. Most of the content is going to be made wherever it's the cheapest to be made, or on whoever's paying the most money. And we're going to see a lot less local content. There'll be no local news, local stories, and all that local culture will get lost, and it will just become a globalized streaming platform, at which point, you know, half the stuff's going to be made like in Atlanta or LA, and that doesn't necessarily relate to people around the world. So there are some benefits definitely from there. And it's a really difficult situation. They're also looking with the TV license of making some other alterations where it maybe becomes a subscription for iPlayer. Maybe they add in adverts then on the BBC, and, you know, making change to it. And ultimately, there is no doubt about the fact that the BBC's current deal, I think, runs till the end of 2027, and they're looking at how to modernise a TV license. You could very easily say, you know, they should get rid of the TV license. BBC should be completely independent, and, you know, subscription and also advertising. Well, at that point, then it no longer becomes a kind of a public service. It's now becoming a company, a corporate identity that needs to make money, and therefore that's going to change what it gets. We're not going to get all those little niche little shows that we get at the minute here in the UK, which just would not be financially viable for a commercial company to do. You only have to look at what's happening with like Channel 4 and ITV, etc. here in the UK, and you can see they're only making shows which are bringing in the money, that they can get money, advertising revenue. They aren't making as many shows as they are because money's being spread around all the different streaming services. This is a very difficult situation. It's also a very hot topic. There's a lot of people that disagree with the TV license, and there's also a lot of advantages to what they're saying which could benefit. No doubt about it, and on my mind, the TV license needs to change. I also do believe that we do need to try and protect local production, but also, you know, the way that the system works, you know, the best rise to the top, and anyone just kind of struggling around at the bottom. The BBC, it does spend out too much money on things that maybe it shouldn't. And there's definitely stuff that I disagree with them with, but they do make some amazing shows, some amazing films, and I do personally, you know, even if they flipped it to a subscription, I would be a BBC subscriber because I like the content that they create. However, there is little doubt that, you know, if you do not like the BBC, or you don't like any of the content and you never watch it, you would argue that, yeah, why do I have to pay for that? The counter argument to that again is that you're paying a license to support local industry because people don't want to pay any money. You know, that is a core thing. I personally think it would be better, since we are in a unique situation here in the UK where it would make more sense to incorporate Disney Plus and Netflix and Amazon into the TV license than introducing a streaming tax, because that's another idea that they've got as well. See, they are looking at a number of ways, all of which is going to end up costing us more money. There is no sugarcoating it. If they introduce a streaming tax, some countries have done that, even some states in the US also have done this. And there again, if they increase the price, therefore that's going to keep going on, because we will end up having to pay for it. How does this all work? What is the best way? We are in a unique situation here in the UK where we do have this TV license, but the days of having, there used to be like these like stories when I was a kid and as a young adult where vans would go around the streets and they would have TV license on it, and they'd have all these antennas and satellite dishes on the top. I think most of which was just pure smoke and mirrors, because the idea of trying to scare us all and give this like almost ghost story that they would find you and you'd get arrested, and they would find it because they could turn up to your house. And if they looked through the mirror and you were watching television, they were very easy to let, in the old days, that you could just go, well, you need to have a TV license, you don't do it. Now, if you don't have one, you can register on and say you don't have a device that can watch live TV, and they'll keep sending you letters and stuff. But it's a very outdated system. It does need modernizing, and I do almost feel like one way of making it modernized is to make it simpler, to make it so as long as you have a device which can get live television or just television on demand, you've got to do the TV license. Or alternatively, they need to completely do away with it, make BBC subscription, and I don't really want necessarily a streaming tax. I don't think that's fair either. But we're in a bit of a weird situation. A lot of people aren't going to agree on how it gets done or what it gets done or when it gets done. But we are going to see some changes here in the UK with how the TV license works. Whether they make it compulsory to include Disney Plus and Netflix, or if they add a streaming tax. No matter about it, we're going to end up paying more money. But that seems to be the way of everything right now. But let me know your thoughts on this. Do you think this is a good idea, a bad idea? If you're from outside the UK, what is the idea of a TV license? Like this, I know Americans really struggle with the concept that you actually have to have a license to watch television in the same way. Well, we need a license to go fishing, a license to drive. We have all that kind of thing. But yeah, television, very weird. But nevertheless, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Go check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com. Like, follow, and subscribe. And I shall see you guys soon. Later.